One night, 200 soldiers entered the forest. By the morning, only the radio sounds remained. For years, no one could explain what happened. November 19th, 1967. 173, climbing toward the summit of Hill 875. The 2nd Airborne Brigade. His battalion was heading towards one of the darkest secrets of Vietnam. But they didn't know that yet. In the middle of the Dak To Valley, Hill 875, covered by dense forests, was a strategic point. North Vietnamese troops controlled it. The order from the Pentagon was clear: take the hill, repel the enemy, secure the area. It was planned as an operation that would last 3 days. The battalion set out with 287 soldiers under the leadership of Major Charles Waters. Most of them were young people between the ages of 19 and 23. Some had arrived in Vietnam months ago, some only weeks ago. Their equipment was standard M16 rifles, grenades, and 3 days' rations. Air support had been requested, but not yet approved. The movement started at 6:30 in the morning. The forest was so dense that even the sunlight could barely penetrate. The soil smelled damp. The temperature was reaching 35 degrees. With every step, the boots sank into the mud. The first 2 hours were quiet, very quiet. "Why is there no contact?" the young private whispered to his friend. But he didn't get an answer, because no one knew the answer. First contact. The trap began to be set. At noon, the first sounds of fire were heard at the foot of the hill. Scattered. Snipers. The 2nd Battalion immediately went into battle formation, but the enemy retreated, quickly, as if, "It's like he's pulling them deeper." Major Waters paused. "This could be a trap," he said over the radio to the command center. But the response was cold. "Your task is to take the hill. Move forward." At 1400 hours in the afternoon, the units had reached halfway up the hill. The forest had become even denser. The visibility was not more than 10 meters. There was a strange silence in the air. Even the birds were not singing. Nature itself seemed to sense the danger. At 1545, the gates of hell opened. In the midst of the ambush, chaos and desperation. Suddenly, fire started from all directions. RPGs, machine guns, grenades, too. The battalion was in the middle of a complete ambush circle. The North Vietnamese Army was hidden on the hill with 1,200 soldiers. American troops were 1/4 that number. 42 soldiers were wounded in the first 10 minutes. 17 of them died. The radio operator was shot in the leg but did not give up the radio. Air support needed, our position." His voice stopped, then static. Night was falling. The forest was already dark, but the night made it invisible. The soldiers could not see each other. They guessed where they were from the enemy voices, from the direction the bullets were coming from. But guessing wasn't enough. "Who's there?" was followed by silence, then the sound of a hand grenade, then the screams, then silence again. At 2100 hours, Major Waters sent his last radio message. "We are surrounded. Our losses are heavy. If we can't hold out until the morning." Communication was lost. Nothing was heard from him again. But in the morning, air support, death from a friend. On the morning of November 21st, air support finally arrived. F-100 Super Sabre jets began bombing the hill. But the coordinates were wrong. The bombs fell within 200 meters of enemy lines, on American soldiers. Another 42 soldiers died in the explosion. More than 60 were injured. The radio operator was screaming frantically, "Stop! Stop! We are here! It's us!" But the jets didn't hear. The second wave of bombs came. The forest was on fire. Napalm had melted the trees. Smoke had covered the sky. The survivors were no longer fighting against the enemy, but against the fire. Some remained inside the circle of flames. Some were shot while trying to escape. This was the bitterest truth of war. Sometimes the enemy was the wrong coordinates of a pilot on your side. But the worst was yet to come. The third night, between hope and decrepitude. On the night of November 22nd, only 90 soldiers were alive on Hill 875. More than half of them were injured. There were no bullets. There was no water. The radio battery was running out. Some of them couldn't even hold their guns anymore. A group of wounded soldiers were sitting in the dark, leaning on each other. They weren't talking, they were just breathing, to feel that they were alive. "My mother wrote me a letter," one of them said. His voice was shaking. "It was my birthday yesterday. I turned 20. Silence. Then another. "Mine was going to be next month." More silence. Later that night, engine sounds were heard in the distance. Helicopters. But they didn't get closer. The weather was very dangerous. The hill was still under enemy fire. The helicopters turned around. The engine sounds moved away. Hope had disappeared with that engine sound. Recovery, the victory that came late. On the morning of November 23rd, 4, together with the battalion support troops, he finally reached Hill 875. But the sight they found was something none of them were prepared for. The forest was completely burned down. The remains of the trees were like black skeletons. The ground was mixed with blood and ash. There were bodies everywhere. Some of them were unrecognizable. Of the 90 soldiers who survived, only 60 were able to walk. Others were carried away on stretchers. Some of them even died that day. Medical attention was delayed. Infections had spread. Hill 875 was taken. But at what cost? 158 out of 287 soldiers died. 142 were wounded. Only 7 soldiers were not injured at all. The operation was planned to last 3 days. It lasted 96 hours, and its effects lasted for years. The aftermath, the war no one's talking about. The soldiers who returned from the war did not speak. For many years, some of them did not speak at all. The diagnosis of PTSD was not yet common in those years. They were just told, "You're having nightmares." In the 1990s, one of the 173rd Brigade veterans told a documentary about what happened. "We got lost in the woods that night, some of us physically, some of us spiritually, but none of us really came back." The Pentagon recorded Operation Hill 875 as a tactical victory, but there was no line in the report. 158 soldiers died unnecessarily. Wrong coordinates, delayed air support, incomplete intelligence. When it all came together, disaster was inevitable. Major Charles Waters fought to the last moment to save the survivors. He was posthumously honored with the Medal of Honor, but the award did not bring back the lives lost. Hill 875 remains one of the bloodiest battles in American history, but it is also one of the least talked about. Because this story is not just about fighting the enemy, sometimes it's about fighting your own system's mistakes. Secret report, the truth hidden for years. Declassified CIA reports in 2003 revealed that North Vietnamese troops knew 3 days in advance that American troops were coming. One of them, a local guide, had leaked the information. The ambush was not a coincidence. It was planned. But this information was never conveyed to the soldiers. The operation was not canceled. 287 soldiers were sent into a trap deliberately. Why? The answer to the question is not in any report. Maybe it never will be. The Lost Brigade, those who live in memories. Today, the top of Hill 875 is forested again. The trees have grown back. Nature has healed itself. But there are still bullet casings, broken safes, and some soldiers' dog tags buried under the ground. Every year, a few surviving veterans come here to remember their friends. They don't talk, they just sit. They listen to the forest. Maybe so they never have to hear what they heard that night again. But some voices never stop. The last call on the radio, the screams of wounded friends, the sound of helicopters flying away, and most of all, the question, why did they forget about us? The answer may never be given, but the story will not be lost, Because 158 soldiers got lost in the forest overnight, but their stories will stay forever. Hill 875, Vietnam's Lost Brigade, a tragedy that history has quietly buried but has never truly forgotten.